So I just wanted to welcome everybody. It's so exciting to be back together a couple weeks after Emilio's incredibly exciting opening. And I'd like to introduce you to JoAnne Northrup, the esteemed JoAnne Northrup, who I have known since she was starting out curating at the DeSesse Museum, and then on to the San Jose Museum, and then chief curator at the San Jose Museum, and then up at the Nevada Museum, and now she's the chief curator at the Nerman Museum at Kansas. And so I'm super honored to have such a brilliant curator here, but also she's a very, very dear friend, and it just means so much to have you here, JoAnne. Thank you. And of course, JoAnne has been really supportive of Emilio, giving him his first institutional show at the Nerman Museum solo show. And so I'll get out of your guys' way. Emilio, we love your work. It's just been an amazing ride. I'm so honored to represent you.
Thank you.
So thanks for joining us. And JoAnne, thanks for flying from Kansas.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So Emilio, we were chatting in Lisa's office, and we were talking about like how when you push the boundaries of your medium, sometimes surprises happen, and sometimes progress happens, and sometimes it's a combination of the two. Do you have any stories to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, regarding what just happened, I suppose. So maybe some of you know, some of you don't, but two of the paintings here over the weekend, the paint completely fell off of the canvas. And so it was one that was hanging right over here, and then one that was a figurative one that was hanging in the back. And yeah, shit happens, I suppose. Slid off. There we go. Yeah. So the actual canvas didn't fall off the wall. It was the paint just slid completely off. And I was telling JoAnne that when Sierra called me that morning. Sierra's not here tonight. She's not feeling well. But she called me, and the whole time she was telling me what happened, I was like so calm, and I was more worried about what was the chaos I was like putting the gallery through. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna get fired. And it wasn't until after the phone call, the shock started sort of hitting me a little bit. And I had a school meeting, so I had delayed for a couple hours. And when I came in, it was pretty shocking to see. It was just looked like flesh or skin just like piled up right underneath. It looked like an installation. It was gnarly.
It looks kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, everyone, my friend, I wasn't sending them to a lot of people, but I was just a couple of my friends were all like, "Wow, that should be double the price now or something." But yeah, so it took me a while to just try to figure out what had happened, and essentially, those were the two paintings that had painted flat. So I ran out of room in my studio, and I painted those flat. So I was like standing on top of them painting and everything. And so with these other ones, they're painted vertically. So like the ones that fell actually weren't even the thickest ones. These are a lot thicker. They're just painted vertically. So as I'm painting them, it's like you're building a wall essentially. And it's you're training the paint essentially to sit there and dry that way. So when these were painted flat and still drying, they were actually the last two to be finished for the show. So they were still relatively wet. And yeah, as soon, we lifted them up, and then a week later we came in and saw a little bit of a wrinkle. And then over the weekend just fell. So,
Things happen.
Yeah, and the thing is, like this type of application for me is new to me. I've only been doing it for a few years where they got heavier, and I think looking back at my work, even 10 years ago, I was like, I'm painting so thick, and I would look at the pieces now in retrospect, and they're so thin. You could see the canvas. So it's not like I'm trying to win the award of like thickest paint or something. It's just I always compare it, I mean, this might be a cheesy analogy, but I always compare it to music. You know, I always want it louder, you know. Mm-hmm. So maybe that the thickness is sort of that, but yeah. So I didn't, you know, I told JoAnne earlier, I didn't go to school. At school, I didn't learn how to paint like Joan Brown. You know, I wish I took classes from Joan Brown, but you know, some of her paintings. There's one really beautiful painting at the Crocker in Sacramento, and my friend and I were looking at it, you know, inspecting it, and if you don't really look, you almost miss it. But there's an entire part of the canvas just completely exposed, and it just fell, you know, and it dried that way, and it just looks like, you know, flesh kind of just hanging off of the canvas. But anyway.
Yeah. So taking a step back, can you talk about like how do you start your day? Like how do you prepare to focus on the latest project? What's your routine?
Yeah. Well, for these paintings, they're kind of daunting to start, or even just to work on, and I have to clear everything from like my life, like all my emails, anything I have to like get taken care of has to be completely done. I can't really have anything going on, you know. And even if I have an event at like 5 or 6 o'clock, and my day's ruined, you know. Yeah. I'm like, I cannot paint. So I really need like a full day to you know, walk to the studio, sit and stare at the blank wall or whatever, or the painting that's in there for an hour, and then get going. But they're not physical in the way that, like, let's say a Jackson Pollock is or something, where it's sort of a dance or whatever, or I'm not throwing, well, yeah, I'm not like throwing paint at the canvas. It's not that kind of physicality, but it is physically draining and mentally draining to paint these. And I think, yeah, I mean, for a number of reasons, but essentially I just have to have everything cleared, you know.
And do you like drink coffee, smoke cigarettes? What do you do?
All of the above.
Yeah. Music.
A lot of music. This last year I was doing listening to a lot of podcasts while I was, music podcasts while I was painting. And last year my doctor said no more caffeine. So I've been caffeine free for a year and a half now.
Wow.
But I still drink, thank you. There's no yeah, but I still drink decaf coffee like a champ.
The ritual.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, just try to get somewhat warmed up mentally and ready to go paint. And you know, the first mark every day feels like even though I paint every day, every time I sit down to get my palette set up, paints out, it feels like I'm painting for the first time almost. Like there's that weird feeling of like, I don't know what I'm doing, you know? And yeah, somehow they just—
That's a really healthy feeling.
Yeah.
It'd be like, have this kind of,
right.
Not sure I should, okay.
Yeah.
And you go for it.
Right. And these ones, especially the more, you know, I use the word collage. Anytime I say collage paintings, everyone thinks that they're collages, but these paintings were sort of designed in a way to be able to just paint anything, you know? And of course, it's not that easy. Once you start working on it, you start thinking about what to add, what not to add, colors and all of that. But they were essentially just designed in a way so that I could, you know, not be afraid to paint. But it, you know, didn't work out that way.
Can you talk about how the Everything Is Something series came about? Because that's what really caught my eye, and that's when I called Lisa and I was just like, tell me more about this artist you have. And of course everyone wants to get in, curators being egotistical. We want to be like, I want to give him his first solo museum show.
Oh, well, thank you.
And so that's what captured my attention.
Well, thank you, first of all, for giving me the opportunity. That was incredible. So that show at the Nerman Museum was last year in August. And yeah, it was a phenomenal opportunity. And I was able to speak and before the opening. And yeah, I talked about where the inspiration came from, the Everything Is Something painting. So the one that's closer by the door right there, that one looks more along the lines of like the where they sort of started out. I believe that one is everything is something 16. I'm not sure. So they're all numbered in like the in sequential order. So the last one I painted is this one here. So I think that's everything is something 20. So with a lot of my paintings, the ideas have just brew over time. It's not like sometimes I'll wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm going to paint this today, and it sort of works out. But something like this has been brewing, and I didn't know it was brewing, but like there was a bunch of things sort of like adding up to that painting. And first was my wife and I moved to North Beach during the pandemic, and our kitchen window, we have a view of Lombard Hill, and from our window, you can kind of see the sky, but it's like the first feeling I got, it's kind of like looking out this window, right? You don't really get a sky unless you're looking low. You're just seeing the city, essentially, or another building. But from my view on top of the hill, we're overlooking, or we can see SFAI and Lombard Hill, essentially. So when you look out our window, it's essentially you're just seeing like a Wayne Thiebaud painting. It's all the homes and the buildings are like this, like a wall, right? So you just essentially get a wall of structures. And for a couple of, I don't know when I did the first one, maybe 2 years ago. So for the first 3 years that I was there, I was looking at this painting, at the window, and thinking, I'm like, how do I paint that? But without literally painting it, right? And so that was one. And the second is, I think 2016 or 2017, I fell in love, the date might be off. I fell in love with the Gerhard Richter painting at the SF MoMA. And it's a city view, almost like an aerial view, black and white painting of Madrid. And I forget what year, maybe it's 68. I'm not sure what year it is. But anyway, so that painting has been I've been telling people for years, I'm like, that's my favorite painting there. And for many reasons. And so those two ideas, I've been, brewing that idea. How do I use this painting? And I didn't know I was going to combine them, but it just sort of worked out. So when the idea came to make a painting for the solo show here, I was making pieces that were a painting similar to them, but the objects were more spread out. And going back to the idea of like, how do I make a work of art that I'm not really afraid to just keep adding stuff to, and not be so precious with it, and not have necessarily a background. And they just kind of worked out that way. So at first I felt like there were cityscapes. And the first three very much look like, if you compare them to the Gerhard Richter, they're almost identical compositions. Mine were in color, but I used to show people at my friends at the bar, I would like turn my painting into a black and white painting, and I'm like, look, you know what I mean? Like showing them that I was copying the Gerhard Richter.
Compositionally.
Exactly,
right,
yeah.
And how do you move between bodies of work? How do you know that it's time to move on to something new?
Like as a series, or I don't know. I think that just happens organically. And I'm just thinking about it now. I think what happens is that I work on these paintings nonstop. Like I go into what I joke with my wife all the time. I'm going into Rocky mode, you know? And so I was like, I need to be like training right now. And so I wake up and my whole day is just focused on painting. There's not like nothing on the agenda, And after a show, I relax from that. Actually, I think this is this is the longest I've gone without painting. I haven't painted for I think it's been like 4 weeks, 5 weeks. I haven't painted and thinking about that now, I think those breaks is what causes the evolution, because I have time to reflect, time to soak in a little bit of vacation, just sleep a lot, and when I come back to it, it's the same idea that I feel like I forgot how to paint, and so I have to start with something new. And that first painting is always, and it's also, I never force myself to get back into painting after a show unless, there's a commission or something like that or whatever. But So it happens pretty naturally, and it comes from some sort of inspiration. Either I watch a documentary, go to the museum, see someone else's art show, and then I'm like, I'm going to paint tomorrow. And so the inspiration comes from that.
You're compelled.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell me about how you got involved. You did a project with Valentino or a series. Like, how did things like that come about, where they're sort of like not part of your practice necessarily, but like in kind of outside the center?
Honestly, I have no idea how that happened. Someone from Valentino hit me up. They slipped into my DMs, and I showed Michelle. I was like, "Who is this? Like, is this real or something?" And I was like, "What is Valentino?" And she's like, "Answer it." And so I did, and she kind of filled me in on what Valentino was or is. That turned into such a great relationship. The person that I was in contact with, his name's Yit. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it. I've met him once in person, but Turkish person who lives in Milan, and an amazing, beautiful soul. Just created a cool relationship. He hit me up to ask me if I wanted to paint on 10 bags. And, till this day, we always joke that we should have asked him for an 11th bag.
Yeah. If only.
Right. And I said, still I'm kind of a yes person. And at that moment, they asked me, can you paint on leather? And I was like, yeah, sure. And, I went to the art store, bought the leather paints, and they were terrible. So I did a little test with acrylic, and it worked out. But if I actually knew who Valentino was or what Valentino was at the time, I would have been terrified. To paint on these bags, because they came with price tags and everything. It was like it was crazy, and somehow 10 bags, all of them without any hiccups, just executed. I don't know how it happened. And I did one a day, so just in 10 days. And then I've worked with them after that. I painted, I made a painting for, is it Pier Paolo? It was hanging in his office, and some other projects too. I did a zine for them, some photo shoots and stuff.
So you have some of your students here this evening. So what, how is teaching for you? Do you love it? Do you have ideas of what you want to convey to your students? How does it work for you?
Yeah, teaching's been great. I've been teaching at Cañada Community College. This is my second semester as a full-time professor there. And it's been amazing. I love teaching, and it's hard with the painting schedule. That was the hardest part for me, is because before I was teaching, I painted every day.
Yeah.
And so now going into teaching, this whole show I was like a weekend warrior. I painted Friday through Sunday, and because of the schedule. Some days I was able to squeeze in a Tuesday or Thursday in there, but outside of that stress, I suppose, of the scheduling, teaching is amazing. I'm inspired by the students. I see a drawing from someone that's never taken a drawing class or a painting class before, and I'm like, how did you make that mark? Or I see the final we just had finals. And I look at all these finals. I'm like, I didn't teach you how to do that. You know what I mean? It's just remarkable. I love, I don't know why. I just love seeing people try really hard. And I always say, first day of class, I always say, art is the only subject where you get an A for effort. And I show them. Lucian Freud, is like the epitome of try hard. They're not beautiful paintings. The color's bad. To me, everything's beautiful, but he's my favorite painter. I'm not dogging on Lucian Freud, but they're not supposed to work. They're not really attractive paintings at all. And there's just so much effort and time that goes into them. You know, some of his paintings took 2 years to paint. And that to me is like the epitome of just love and effort into the work. You know, it manifests and it shows. And that's something that I try to teach or talk about in class.
Did you ever have an indication when you were growing up, like talk about your upbringing and where you thought, oh, I'm going to be an artist?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I didn't grow up with art at all. I've said this story a few times before, but the only art that I had in my apartment was, or at our house growing up, was a Matisse fishbowl print and 3 or 4 Chagall prints. And that was later. I think it wasn't until early high school that those appeared in the house. I think before that, my mom had. There's a famous artist who did that Duran Duran cover art. Is it Rio, that album? But it's kind of like a 80s style figurative work.
Nagel. Yes, I know.
Yeah, so we
That's
had like
my
one of
era.
those, you know, like a print or something. So when I was
Patrick
a kid,
Nagel, right? Patrick Nagel.
Yeah, and I didn't even know his name until a year ago. We saw it in an office, and I was like, "That's the art that I grew up with," you know. And then I put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, "Oh, that's from the Duran Duran cover." And anyway, and when I was a kid, I used to stare at that, but I was like, I didn't know if I liked it or not. You know, it just matched the furniture. But yeah, I was, you know, I never went to a museum, or I can't remember going to a museum. But I remember getting in trouble all the time for drawing in class. Like I was a terrible, terrible student. My mom moved me from a school when I was in 4th grade because I was gonna flunk. So, and that, I don't even know how I passed middle school or high school. Well, I do, I cheated off my friend, but yeah, so I was just a terrible, terrible student. But I was drawing all the time, whether it was drawing from skateboard magazines or drawing, a lot of skateboard magazine drawings in high school. And then I went to school. Again, I was a terrible student, so I got sold on this school for animation, thinking I was going to learn how to draw and do animation by hand. And once I got there, it was all computer animation, and I hated it. And I tried to quit, but I'm like really shy too, so I went to the director of the school. I'm like, "Can I quit?" He's like, "No," and I was like, "Okay." So I stuck around and again, the whole time I was there, I was ditching my computer classes to go to the figure drawing class. So that's where I really learned a little, like an intro to art. It's crazy. I got really lucky with my figure drawing teacher. He's a famous figure artist. He's got a book out now and everything. And I was his first student at a workshop. I went to a Saturday workshop, and there was 2 people. There was me and another kid and the nude model, you know? And it was he was 26 years old, the teacher, and he's super successful, and he's been a huge inspiration from then and still now. And
What's his name?
Steve Hampton, but I think his book is under the name Michael Hampton, if anyone looks it up. But when I was actually in his class, not in the workshop, he showed up one day with a little zine, black and white book, and I asked, it just looked really weird. It looked like cave paintings. And I asked him, "What is that?" And he was like, "Oh, this is Jackson Pollock." And I was like, "Who?" Like, no idea, you know. And when I saw the book, I didn't know, it was like so abstract to me. I mean, obviously it's abstract art, but it looked like cave paintings. I thought they were ancient. Like, I thought like an alien painted that or something. I just couldn't understand what was on the book. And it was just this little black and white detailed of a Pollock. And, you know, he showed me the book. It was a lot of words, and I was like, "I'm not gonna read that." And, but that's when I started getting like curious. And I started asking him a lot of questions, like, who painted that? When did they paint that? Like, do people buy that? You know what I mean? It was like this whole thing. I was just so and then that got me hooked after that. And I think my first show during that time, my mom took me to go see a show in San Diego, Mary Cassatt show. And I was blown away. I just thought, best painter I've ever, it was my first painting show, but I was like, this is the greatest work I've ever seen. And shortly after that, I saw or right before that, I think I saw the Basquiat movie and the Julian Schnabel movie. And so that was actually one of the first things. I was 17 when I saw that. And after I saw that movie, I'm like, I want to do that. I want to be a painter. And so that sort of just set it off, and.
But no one in your family, like no one, you didn't have any artists in your family?
I don't think so. Yeah, no. I mean, maybe a couple of like paint by number style.
Yeah.
But yeah, my dad is, and my brother, this is gonna sound bad, but they're not really artistic, but they're very creative. Like they want to be creative. Like my dad has always been a DIY. Like he's like, no, we're not going to go out and buy a case for our stereo system. I'm going to build it, And like when he builds it, it took him a year or something, and we look at it and we're like, what is that? It's like it looks like a child did it or something, And I was in 5th grade. This is like the epitome here. This is a good little. My dad and my relationship in a nutshell, or our relationship. But I was in Cub Scouts and 4th grade, I think, and everyone was supposed to build these little cars, like derby cars, to like put on this slide to race. Yeah, and anyway, my dad and I worked on this thing for, it felt like a week, but it was probably just like 2 hours or something. And I felt like he did a lot of the work, and I just ended up painting like a little eagle on the front. I'm like, oh, that's cool, And we show up to the race. My car didn't meet the weight standards. They ended up just like tacking weights on top, so it looked like this transformer, just disaster, and did not win or anything. But at the end of it, they were like, and the award to the best car without the help of a parent goes to Emilio. And I was like, what? I was so proud to go up there and get the award or whatever. And I think my dad was really embarrassed, because he literally built the car for him. But you show up to these things and everyone's cars are like super slicked out and like airbrushed, and they had they look like stickers. I'm like, did you guys buy those? Like but I don't know. So that's still how I feel. That's how I feel my work is with painting. And everything I do is like, I've never, I just try hard, to like, this is gonna look really cool, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, I suppose. But.
And how do you think your work has changed since you started showing here at Dolby Chadwick Gallery? Do you think it's like influenced the way that you've, in what ways?
Many ways. I mean, I tell Lisa all the time that, I'm super grateful to be showing here, and let me go back a bit. I've been sort of a gallery rat here since like 2013, maybe, I want to say, where I've just been coming to the openings and like, kind of like not saying hi to anyone and just kind of just peeking and seeing who's working here or whatever, but really into the art. I love the artists that show here, Konevsky, Anne Gale, Edwige, Jennifer Paczynski, Terry Power. I mean, I can keep going, but they're all amazing. And I've always been really curious of what's showing here at this gallery. And I remember it was like my second or third time here. I'm like, I want to show there. I had like my eye on the gallery. And so when I got the opportunity to show here, it was unreal. Like I felt cloud nine, I was like, what? Like, no way. Like, this is amazing. And yeah, everyone that works here, I mean, literally inspires me to make, not that there's like good or bad art, or I mean, maybe there is, but, make better art. I was like, I got to try hard, got to get into Rocky mode, And so, they are a huge inspiration to fueling the work for sure. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, other than that, it's not like I had an idea for the show. I mean, I have little ideas here and there for that first solo show in terms of images, but I've never felt like I've been an illustrator in a sense, or like a narrative painter, where I have a storyline. They kind of just happen. Some of the storylines just happen. And before that, I was just painting portraits essentially. So I've never painted like a scene. I mean, that's as close as a scene as I've gotten, really. And it's just in the studio or in a fake kitchen / studio. I don't know. Yeah. So then for me, it's always been about the process, and the elements of design. Just the basics: line, shape, color, texture, value, and just try to. I don't know if I'm answering that question right or not, but
Perfect. I wonder if we should have any questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
I actually am so curious to know when the painting slid off the canvas, did it come off in one piece?
Well, the question is, when the painting slid off the canvas, did it come off in one piece?
I wish we had it recorded, but yeah, it was in one pile on the floor. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, the one over here was not the thickest painting. Like, it was actually the thinnest painting in the show, and I couldn't believe how much paint was on the floor. It was, and we tried to like slide it onto plexiglass to like see if we could like create something with it, and I couldn't lift it. Like, it was insane.
Wow.
Yeah, it was shocking. But some of these paintings, also the other learning curve I think I was mentioning earlier, these, and I've mentioned to a lot of my friends, the handler said that painting weighs 200 pounds back there. So it's a lot of paint on the canvas. It's insane.
Oh, this is on the subject of a lot of paint on the canvas. I always think of this like ridiculous line from a Vincent Scully documentary about American art, where he's talking about Paul Revere by John Singleton Copley. He goes, "He's his pot like a teapot." Anyway, and I was like looking at these tubes of paint, and I was like, how much paint did it take to paint that tube of paint?
Yeah.
Like, that looks like the whole tube as that tube.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of every, yeah, it's painful. There's a lot of these objects, especially on some of the slower ones over there, and these ones. I mean, just to create one object is probably anywhere from 3 to 5 tubes of paint.
And
for
where do you
just
buy the
that.
paint?
Just at Blick.
Do they love you? Or are they just
Yeah.
like, thank goodness.
We're
gonna make our month.
Yeah, I don't want to brag, but they might have mentioned once. I don't know if they said favorite customer or best customer. I don't know about favorite, but maybe they said our best customer one time, which I was like, I think I called Michelle. I'm like, guess what? But yeah, they definitely know me for sure, and they've stocked up the oil paint section for me. But I don't want to say cranky, but I get a little like, I don't know. I feel like my painting teacher, he used to come in and complain about, the way we were holding our brushes, or like, if you were holding your brush too close to the paint, you had paint on your hand, he wouldn't help you. It's like, and so when I go into the art store sometimes and I'm looking for the color and I'm like, they're out of alizarin? And I'm like,
really?
Oh boy. I'm like, I have to, I go up, I'm like, listen guys. So yeah, sometimes, you don't get what you came in for, but I've definitely emptied them out. I should record it sometime, but what I do is I take my cart, or I have this shopping cart that I take with me because I can't carry the paint. And I have these crates, like milk crates. And literally, it's like one of those like shopping sprees from the 90s. Like I take the whole thing and I just dump it into.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're like, every time I go in there, it's like a, $1,000 purchase or whatever, just of oil paint.
So thanks to Lisa, she's keeping you in paint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah. Over.
So do you build up the paint or do you just go at it as thick as you do?
No,
So in terms of technique?
Yeah. Yeah, you just build them up, but they do start thicker, they're not that heavy from the get-go. So it's layers and layers. So you can actually see the canvas in that one, I think in the top left corner. Maybe there's a little window somewhere. But with these ones, they were a little bit looser, these two and then the one in the back. That one is painted a little bit slower, but most of these take about 8 weeks to paint, and that's 7 days a week. So there's no real, maybe I'll take a day off here or there, but they're like serious sessions. And just start like any other painting, just blank canvas, and I just start painting.
But you build it up in layers? You go over the wet paint?
Oh yeah, it's all wet.
Until it's dry?
They never dry.
They never dry?
Yeah, no, they're wet on wet. Sometimes depending, so if you're familiar with oil paint too, some paints are a little bit thinner and some paints are thicker. So sometimes you want to put a thick paint on a thin paint. It doesn't want to, so that's when you kind of have to like smack it on or something. So, builds up to that point where you're just, going back to the little box car, you just gotta get it done somehow. So you just like smack it on and figure out a way to get it on there. But they are relatively thin. So in the early stages, when I kind of cover up the whole canvas, I'll like take a photo of it. I'm like, God, I wish I could leave it like this, and it's after like a week of painting. And then I sit and stare at it. I'm like, can I leave it like this? But, and then I wait, with these ones, I was able to paint multiple at the same time. That's one thing I learned with the first show. Every one of them was painted one at a time. So it was like
start to finish.
Yeah, so it was 8
wow.
weeks,
Yeah.
8 weeks. And then this show, I was able to paint that one and the larger one that's in the other room at the same time. And it took about 8 weeks because I would work 5 hours on that and then another 3 or 4 hours on the other one and then switch, or just do 3 days on that, 3 days on the other until I reached the point where I'm like, okay, maybe I'll let it sit. Not because I'm letting the paint dry, it's because I don't know what to add to it anymore. I think what's hard about these paintings is, and they take so long, is that you resolve the paintings over and over and over, so that you come to these stopping points where you're like, is it done? And then, I asked my wife, she's like, nope. I'm like,
Okay.
so, yeah, she's the ultimate, she'll let me know when the painting's done.
Yeah. Yeah. Like stop there.
Yeah, for sure. But, yeah.
There was a question with the green scarf.
Apropos of your painting technique, do you ever, scrape a whole area away and rework it, or you just keep going with the original idea?
There's been just a few times that I've scraped paint off. And that might happen more maybe on some of the portraits. If I didn't like how the portrait was turned out, or if the background color, I was like, oh, that's not good.
You have so much painting that would pile up if you did it that way. You could almost use it as an underpaint for thick.
Yeah, no, I have. I have a couple. It hasn't happened that often, but when I do, yeah, it's just literally a mountain on my palette, and I look at it and it ends up being gray because it's so many colors, and only a couple times that I've repurposed it or put it in those. You can buy tubes of paint, empty ones, and put them in there. but that takes so much time. So after I did that once, I was like, any other time that I scraped it, it literally just went into the trash. And also, if sometimes you feel a little bit like a failure scraping that much off. It's like literally just 20 tubes of paint just coming off, and then you're like, what am I going to do with this gray mud?
That makes me think of like a lot of successful artists, they'll hire a studio assistant and then they almost like back away from the painting. Could you ever imagine doing that? Like a signing?
Oh, I think about that all the time. You watch, I would love to have a studio assistant. Just even to move the paintings around, because I cannot physically move them. That one, weighs 200.
Yeah.
A lot of them, once they get to that size, this size, I can't move them by myself.
That painting behind Emilio takes 3 people.
Wow.
They're shocked.
Maybe 2.
2 very strong people.
But yeah, no, they're heavy. And some are surprisingly lighter than others, I think like that painting there is probably one of the heavier ones. And when you paint them, I don't know. But going back to the studio assistant thing, you see people like, Jeff Koons or whatever having, he's not talking smack on Jeff Koons or anything. I just watched a video on the art market, like 2017 movie documentary. And there was a clip of Jeff Koons with 10 assistants making the paintings for him. And then he was like, I'm actually making the paintings through them or something. I forget, it's still his paintings, And I understand what he means because he's talking about that he created this workshop and this system. I think he was using the word system. He trained everyone to paint exactly in this system. So in a sense, it's like he has these extra fingers, So I get that, but I don't know. I don't think I could ever. I would love to. I've thought about it where I was like, if I had an assistant, maybe they could build up the first 5 weeks for me,
That'd be nice.
They're not honest. For me, I wouldn't feel honest with the work. I feel like in order to arrive at the composition, the final composition, I needed to earn that composition. Do you know what I mean? If I just came on to someone else's artwork, I'd be trying to add to it or fix it or something, And I don't even know if I could train anyone how to do that. I don't even know what I'm doing, It's so that would be really difficult, I think. But amazing help, for sure.
I have a question for JoAnne. So we have known each other a long time, and you can be great friends with somebody, and they become a really important curator, and it's wonderful connection, like having somebody that that you respect and that And you've been curating a lot of shows in new media. You curated the retrospective to Leo Villalba and Jennifer Steinkamp, and all of these things which were media, like my gallery's kind of one about painting. And I'm just curious when, I know that we love each other, we have such a close friendship, and I'm sure that you have probably wanted to give my artists shows, but as a curator, you're also have this responsibility to do something new that's never been done before, and then, kind of how does painting become different? And I'm just curious, with Emilio, what caught your eye?
I feel like it was the pop art aspect of it because I love pop art in all its forms. Right now I have a show of the fashion designer Jeremy Scott with Catherine Bernhardt. It's called A Match Made in Heaven. So I like common objects. And when I saw the work on your website, like Bustelo coffee and all these recognizable things from daily life, I was just like, oh, okay, Lisa. That's what I went for. And I really do respond to that because I feel like it's very, I don't think art, it has to be something that's for only a few people or for people, they go to museums and they're like, And it's like art can actually be very joyful and happy and absorb you and be colorful. And that's Emilia's work, is that you look at it and it makes you happy, but it's also substantial, and it's also, he cares deeply about his craft, obviously. So yeah.
You also have this responsibility to do something that really you haven't seen. I mean, you might say joke around, but it's still has its own language.
Yeah.
It's like you can't do it just because.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have to fall in love authentically.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question about the piece behind you, because that does not look like the view that you were talking about toward Plum or.
Oh yeah. So this is a view from my studio. So I paint at home, but I also have a little studio in North Beach as well. So that's a view of Kearney Street. So if you were to like stick your head out the window and look to the right, you would see the Transamerica building right there. So the studio's right on Columbus and Kearney. It's like that triangle, right, that little area across from Vesuvio. But I mean, it doesn't look exactly like that. There's a big billboard right there that I didn't want to paint in there. But yeah, this painting, and this is what I really liked about the Wayne Thiebaud show that's up right now at the Legion of Honor. And what I like about all my heroes is that they've always paid homage to art history, in a sense. Art comes from art. It's like what the Thiebaud show said. And for me, that's how I learned art. I didn't really learn, I learned a lot from just books, not reading them, but looking at images of painters from the past. And naturally, I think in school, maybe it's because I saw a lot of Manet's paintings. When I first discovered Velázquez and Manet, I saw there were so many paintings from Manet that were identical to Velázquez paintings. Like the Dead Soldier Velázquez painting, or Workshop Velázquez, and then the Manet Dead Matador, like the exact same pose, the exact same sort of composition. It was a figure leaning over or reclining. And when I was in school, I did a painting of myself in the exact same pose, with like my feet on the top left corner, my head on the bottom right corner, and of me sleeping in bed. And when I got to school, I was so proud, and it was like my first large painting. I was so proud of the painting, and I don't know, the teacher's critique was, it was like whatever, but at that time in school, I was really inspired by art. Getting my compositions, again, going back to the idea that I'm not really a storyteller or whatever. And so I would do that I would look at Picasso early drawings, and I remember there was I think a painting, profile painting, that's on the book of the early Picasso works. And I did a drawing, I posed one of my friends at school in the same position and kind of drew them in that style. And I've been doing that ever since. The red figure that's around the corner is an homage to one of Velázquez's paintings. And I purposely did not look at the image so I could try to just recreate it from how I remembered it. And the pose is pretty close, the idea. And another artist I look at a lot is Munch. So Munch would, there's a lot of paintings where the head was on the lower side of the composition. And I've spent years just looking at that Munch. So I don't have to look at a Munch book to like take inspiration or whatever. But so when I see this painting, I think of Munch, like where it came from. But I just wanted to tell the story of that piece. Yes.
Yeah. A couple of things. When you were talking about starting your day out and just kind of getting primed and ready to go and laying your colors out on the palettes, do you have a sense of colors, what you're going to do? I noticed red obviously is a kind of repeated coloring in there, but when you lay it out, is it change over time when you start?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's all temperament, mood. Sometimes I'll have colors out for days and where I'm squeezing the same kind of colors out, and then I'll tell myself, you're just being lazy. And it's because I have crates of paints. So sometimes I'll just grab the paints that are on top, and then I'll tell my, it's like just brown and blue and ochre or something. And then, not that those colors aren't beautiful, but at a certain point, I'm literally just being lazy, just grabbing those first tubes. So I'm like, okay, I have to dump this out, find the colors underneath. So there's a conscious decision for sure what colors I'm using, but at the same time, it can be a bit impulsive. Yeah, what was the original question? Sorry.
Just your approach in going to and changing up. I did have another question.
Yeah.
You had, when she was mentioning pop art, that you mentioned it's a big influence. As you studied Thibault, early Thibault, but a lot of those other painters at that time were pop artists using common objects. Mm-hmm. And I see you have the Coca-Cola logo on.
Yeah.
And so there's obviously a love of branding, maybe.
I just love all art, honestly. Like that, when I was in art school, one of my best, I always latched on to one friend at school, and this girl, this is the first person that I really was able to connect with at school. And we took a lot of classes together, and we were just, we would paint in the same room at times. And she's like, what your problem is? And I was like, no. She's like, you just like everything. And that's kind of how I am. I can go into any show, even if I think I'm gonna hate it, walk around, take a look at every piece. And then by the end of the show, I'm like, it's a really good show. There's something there. And I do that with anything. And my best friend now says that about movies. He's like, I'm not taking any more movie recommendations from you. Because I like everything. Like, even the bad ones, I'm like, that was a good movie. But that's how I am with painting, and I love Warhol. I love Jasper Johns, Rauschenberg. One of the first movies I watched right after that Basquiat movie was Who Gets to Call It Art? And can't pronounce his last name well, but it's Henry Gelsiger, And I love that movie. It was on VHS, and I ran it out or whatever. I fell in love with Frank Stella, like anything and everything. And I've been like that with every movement that I've really gotten into. And with this particular show, maybe the pop art element just happened naturally. I wasn't consciously thinking it. I was more thinking Bay Area figurative. And when I got to North Beach, I was like, I'm in the land. Mm-hmm. And right during COVID, there was a David Park retrospective at the SF MoMA, and I had tickets for it. And it closed. There was a re-shutdown. I don't know if you guys remember that, but 2021, January, something like that, it re-shut down. So the week I had the ticket, the MoMA closed again. But just from the banner, I just told this story a couple weeks ago, but just from the banners that were hanging up, I fell in love with David Park. And I was like, I love that artist. And Matt Gonzalez gave me a copy of the Nancy Boas David Park book. And I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, Orange County, the Jack, what is it, Jack White? Huh?
Jack Black.
Jack Black, but who's Mike White? Yeah, so Mike White was the writer, I think, of that movie. And there's a scene in that movie where the main character is reading a book, and he's like crying and laughing. He's like, this book changed my life, And I saw that when I was 17, and when I read this book, I was like, oh my God, this is my Orange County moment. But yeah, I laughed, cried, everything with that book. And at the time I had just gone through a pretty traumatic back injury. And David Park went through a back injury too. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah. And, they lived right down the street from where we moved. I could see SFAI from our window. It was very electric for me. And I spent 2 years learning how to paint that style. What I thought, again, I didn't go to school learning, how to paint like a Bay Area figurative artist. And so my couple of shows that I had at the previous gallery I was at were like training almost. Like I was just experimenting and then adding a couple of like safety paintings into the show. But then really looking back, I'm like, I don't even know how I got this show or how even people like bought some of the paintings. I'm like, this is crazy. Like I'm just experimenting. But that looking back, I mean, that is what's really cool about art, I suppose, is you can take risks and experiment and start over again throughout your journey, and yeah, just being inspired.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.